In the glamorous world of post-war European sports cars, few names sparkle with both beauty and tragedy like the BMW 507 Roadster from the late 1950s. It was the car designed to dazzle America, to plant a Bavarian flag on California highways, and rival the most exclusive convertibles of its day. Yet it nearly bankrupted its maker and disappeared into obscurity for decades. The 507 was more than a machine. It was a statement of ambition, sculpted by Count Albrecht von Goertz with proportions that still take your breath away. A car meant for Hollywood stars and jet-set aristocrats, yet doomed by a price tag that only a handful could afford. Imagine a company already teetering financially, betting its survival on a roadster that cost far more to build than it could sell for. This wasn't just a miscalculation, it was an existential gamble. And yet, the paradox is irresistible. A commercial disaster that now commands millions at auction. A forgotten German classic reborn as a global icon of scarcity, elegance, and redemption. How does a car so thoroughly rejected in its own time become one of the most valuable collectibles today? That tension between failure and immortality is where the story of the BMW 507 Roadster unfolds. And it's a journey that reveals as much about design, culture, and survival as it does about the machine itself. So let's dive into this legend together, and if you enjoy the ride, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which automotive story you want us to uncover next. The BMW 507 Roadster from the late 1950s was born into an atmosphere of ambition, risk, and desperation, a company searching for a way to stay relevant after the devastation of war and the economic fragility of post-war Germany. BMW was rebuilding its identity, caught between producing small, affordable cars to keep the lights on and dreaming of a flagship model that could prove the company belonged among the automotive elite. Into that fragile equation walked the idea of a glamorous two-seat roadster designed to charm American buyers and compete with high-profile rivals. The 507 was meant to be BMW's halo car, the one that put the badge on the map internationally, yet it would also expose the dangerous gap between vision and financial reality. The opening chapters of this story aren't just about a car, they're about a company gambling its future. Micro-story. The spark of an idea. It all began with a vision sparked by an influential importer who believed BMW could capture America's fascination with European roadsters. At the time, Americans were enamored with stylish two-seaters that combined performance with prestige, and the idea of a German-built rival seemed irresistible. Count Albrecht von Goertz, a designer with a flair for sculpting elegance from simplicity, was brought in to give the concept form. What he produced was breathtaking, a long hood, a low stance, and curves that seemed carved by wind and speed. On paper, it was the perfect blend of artistry and engineering, a car that could match the glamour of Hollywood while carrying BMW's engineering credibility. Yet beneath that sculpted surface lurked the seeds of a looming financial nightmare, because every inch of that design demanded precision, craftsmanship, and costly production methods that BMW simply wasn't equipped to support. The dream was intoxicating, but the bill would soon come due. Context Digest: Germany's recovery years. In the mid-1950s, Germany was still climbing out of the shadows of war, and its industries were struggling to redefine themselves. BMW in particular was fragile, caught between producing tiny bubble cars and motorcycles for survival and yearning for a prestige project to restore its reputation. The 507 was meant to signal rebirth, a declaration that BMW could once again stand alongside the most respected names in the automotive world. Yet the economic climate was unforgiving, with limited resources and a cautious consumer base. To embark on such a costly roadster project was not just bold, it bordered on reckless micro-story. The star power factor. When BMW unveiled the 507, it wasn't just the press that turned its head. Hollywood noticed too, with high-profile celebrities among the first to order one. Elvis Presley famously drove a 507 during his time in Germany, and his ownership alone gave the car an aura of stardom that transcended its mechanical details. Athletes, aristocrats, and musicians were drawn to the 507's elegance, and for a moment, it seemed like BMW had found the formula to capture attention in the most lucrative market in the world. Yet those who placed orders were in for a shock. Delivery delays, spiraling costs, and a final sticker price nearly double what the importer had promised left potential buyers frustrated. For every sale BMW made, they bled money, and the 507 began shifting from dream to liability. Reflection bridge. The contrast between celebrity allure and crushing financial reality sharpened the paradox at the heart of the 507's story. Context digest, the engineering challenge. Unlike mass-market models, the BMW 507 demanded painstaking assembly and specialized components, from its lightweight aluminum body panels to its finely tuned V8 engine. These were features that made the car a marvel to drive and own, but they also made it impossible for BMW to produce at a profitable scale. Unlike rivals who had mastered the balance of cost and desirability, BMW was essentially hand-building an exotic in a factory designed for volume cars. This mismatch between design ambition and production capability created a financial sinkhole. Every car delivered was a loss, and the strain began to show on BMW's bottom line. Microstory, a rare Roadster's first drives. For the lucky few who received their 507s, the driving experience was nothing short of thrilling. Its V8 engine, producing just under 150 horsepower, gave it respectable performance for the era, while its handling set it apart from heavier, less nimble rivals. Owners described the feeling of elegance on wheels, a car that could cruise boulevards as gracefully as it could tackle mountain passes. But such pleasures came at a staggering cost, one that few could justify once word spread of the price hikes. A halo car may create buzz, but when the buzz turns into skepticism over whether the company can even survive, the reputation that Halo casts becomes darker. Reflection bridge. What was once envisioned as BMW's crown jewel was quickly turning into the weight that dragged the company deeper into financial peril. Context digest. The business fallout. By the late 1950s, only about 250 units of the BMW 507 were produced, far fewer than the thousands BMW had hoped would cross the Atlantic into eager American garages. Dealers who had once championed the car began to back away, unable to sell such an expensive product to a cautious market. The company's resources dwindled, and the ambitious Roadster nearly bankrupted the brand. For BMW, the 507 became a cautionary tale, a lesson in how not to overreach at a time when survival demanded pragmatism. Microstory. The car that nearly killed a company. Behind the scenes, executives were grappling with the fallout of their decision. Production costs were out of control, sales were anemic, and the company's very future was at risk. Employees worried whether the brand would survive, and whispers of a buyout or collapse hung in the air. The 507 was stunning on the outside, but inside the company, it was a ticking time bomb. Yet, in an ironic twist of history, the very thing that threatened BMW's existence would one day become the crown jewel of its legacy. The story of the BMW 507 Roadster as a near-fatal miscalculation raises the question of how such a disaster could later evolve into one of the most coveted collector cars in the world. A transformation we'll trace as its reputation shifted from ruin to reverence. The BMW 507 Roadster from the late 1950s entered its second act not on the showroom floor, but in the hearts of enthusiasts who couldn't forget its timeless beauty. What began as a failed business gamble slowly transformed into a cult object of desire, thanks to its rarity, its association with stars, and its undeniable elegance. Collectors began to realize that the very scarcity caused by its failure was what made it extraordinary. Owning one wasn't just about having a Roadster, it was about holding a piece of history that almost erased BMW from the map. The escalation of its reputation didn't happen overnight. It was fueled by cultural memory, restoration projects, and the growing appreciation for cars that told a bigger story than horsepower numbers. The paradox was becoming clear. The 507's commercial disaster had sown the seeds of its immortality. Microstory. Elvis's lost Roadster. One of the most captivating tales in the 507's journey involves Elvis Presley's personal car. When he drove his white 507 during his military service in Germany, it drew crowds wherever he went. Over time, the car disappeared into obscurity, eventually discovered in rough condition decades later, sparking one of the most famous restorations in BMW's history. That single rediscovery became a symbol of how forgotten legends could be resurrected, and it elevated the car's mythos far beyond its original sales numbers. What had once been just another luxury toy for a global superstar became a relic of cultural significance. Context digest. The rarity premium. With only about 250 units ever produced, The BMW 507 Roadster became a textbook case of scarcity creating value. Unlike rivals that produce thousands of their models, BMW's unintentional rarity ensured that each surviving example was precious. Collectors, museums, and enthusiasts began competing for the handful that remained, and this competition drove values upward. As decades passed, the 507's status shifted from the car that nearly killed BMW to the car that proves beauty outlives failure. Microstory, the forgotten garage find. Another layer of the 507's mystique came from occasional barn finds, cars tucked away in storage by owners who couldn't afford to maintain them or who simply moved on to other pursuits. When these hidden gems emerged, often needing extensive restoration, they fueled headlines and inspired stories of resurrection. Each find was more than a car. It was a chapter of history uncovered, sparking excitement not just among collectors, but among everyday enthusiasts who marveled at the idea that such treasures could still be hiding in plain sight. Reflection Bridge. The 507's rarity and rediscovery stories turned it into more than a vehicle. They made it a legend reborn. Context Digest, Restoration. As resurrection. Restoring a BMW 507 is no simple task. With so few produced and so many parts bespoke to its design, even the most skilled shops faced daunting challenges. Yet this difficulty only added to the allure. Every restored 507 became a testament not just to the car's design, but to the lengths people would go to preserve automotive history. In the process, restorations became part of the legend themselves, often costing as much as a new supercar, but yielding a machine with value far beyond the sum of its parts. Microstory. The auction block drama. As the collector car market grew in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the BMW 507 began making appearances at high-profile auctions. Each time one crossed the block, the bidding wars escalated, shattering previous records and cementing the model's reputation as a multi-million-dollar classic. Auctioneers highlighted its design pedigree, its rarity, and its celebrity connections, transforming the 507 from an engineering curiosity into a symbol of ultimate exclusivity. Watching prices climb from 6 figures to 7 over the span of a few decades was itself a narrative, proof that failure could mature into fortune. Reflection Bridge. The marketplace was rewriting the 507's history, turning what had once been a liability into a pinnacle of desirability. Microstory, a cultural artifact. Beyond money and prestige, the BMW 507 became a cultural artifact, representing the resilience of a brand that refused to die. For enthusiasts, owning or even seeing one was less about performance stats and more about connecting with a story of redemption. The 507 embodied design purity, the kind that never went out of style, and served as a living reminder that risk and failure can sometimes lead to timeless legacy. It was no longer just a car, it was a piece of design history, an icon of both fragility and strength. Context Digest. Changing collector priorities. By the time the 21st century rolled around, the classic car market had shifted toward valuing stories, design, and cultural impact as much as outright performance. The 507 fit perfectly into this evolution. While it wasn't the fastest roadster of its era, it carried a narrative unmatched by many of its peers. Collectors prized it not just for what it could do, but for what it represented: the ambition, the gamble, the survival. In that light, the 507 wasn't just desirable, it was irreplaceable. Microstory. The blueprint of redemption. As BMW itself grew into one of the world's leading luxury automakers, the company embraced the 507's story as part of its heritage. Modern roadsters and grand tourers owe some of their DNA to the 507, not in terms of direct engineering but in philosophy. The idea that elegance, exclusivity, and emotional design matter as much as raw numbers. What was once a nearly fatal mistake became a symbolic foundation for BMW's modern image, showing how history's failures can inspire future successes. The journey of the BMW 507 Roadster from commercial flop to cult obsession raises a final question. How does that legacy resonate today? When surviving examples sell for millions and embody the very soul of BMW's heritage? That's where the next chapter leads us. The BMW 507 Roadster from the late 1950s completes its story not in failure or even in rediscovery, but in the enduring legacy it now carries in the world of classic cars. Once dismissed as a financial disaster, the 507 today stands as a crown jewel of German design, a machine whose value is measured not just in dollars, but in cultural resonance. Collectors, historians, and everyday enthusiasts alike view it as a car that embodies both fragility and triumph, a symbol of how ambition, even when it nearly collapses a company, can carve a place in history. Its scarcity ensures that each surviving car is cherished, and its role in BMW's near demise gives it an emotional weight unmatched by rivals. This is the final transformation, from burden to treasure, from forgotten to immortal. Microstory, the $1 million Roadster. In the modern collector market, restored BMW 507 Roadsters routinely fetch seven-figure sums at auction, making them some of the most expensive German classics ever sold. This price is not just about rarity, it's about the story behind the car, the journey from commercial failure to cultural icon. When a 507 crosses the auction block, the room buzzes not because of its horsepower numbers, but because bidders know they're vying for a piece of redemption itself. Each sale reinforces the idea that the 507 has transcended its time, becoming timeless. Context digest, legacy. In BMW's lineup, today, BMW points to the 507 as part of its proud design lineage. The car's clean lines and elegant proportions influence the philosophy behind later models, even if not directly in engineering terms. Modern BMW Roadsters echo its balance of sportiness and refinement, and its spirit lives on whenever the company emphasizes emotional design over pure performance. For fans, the 507 is a touchstone, proof that the company's DNA includes risk-taking and artistry. Microstory, the owners who preserve history. Current 507 owners are more than collectors. They are caretakers of a fragile legacy. Maintaining one requires immense resources, with bespoke restorations and parts sometimes costing as much as new exotics. Yet owners gladly make the investment, not only for the prestige, but for the responsibility of preserving a story that shaped BMW's identity. Each time one appears at a concours event or a museum exhibition, it serves as a rolling monument to resilience. Reflection bridge. The very car that once threatened BMW's existence now defines its heritage in the eyes of enthusiasts around the world. Context, digest, why it matters. Today, for American audiences especially, the BMW 507 offers a lesson in how automotive culture values not just performance, but narrative. It was designed to win over US buyers in the 1950s and failed spectacularly. Yet today, it is revered precisely because of that failure. The US market became the stage where the 507 stumbled, but it's also the stage where its legacy shines brightest, with American collectors among its most passionate champions. The car that never quite belonged here has finally found its place. Microstory, from near bankruptcy to blueprint. In hindsight, the 507 can be seen as a necessary chapter in BMW's survival story. The company's brush with collapse forced it to reevaluate, streamline, and eventually create models that truly secured its future. Without the painful lessons of the 507, BMW's later success might never have materialized. In this way, the car serves as both a warning and an inspiration, a blueprint for how failure can be the foundation of growth. The BMW 507 Roadster is no longer the car that almost killed BMW. It is the car that taught BMW what it needed to become. Its multi-million-dollar valuations today are less about exclusivity and more about recognition. Recognition of beauty, resilience, and the irony that sometimes the greatest failures are the ones most worth remembering. And with that recognition, the legend of the 507 is sealed forever, setting the stage for a closing reflection on why this forgotten German classic still matters to us today. The BMW 507 Roadster from the late 1950s leaves us with a story that is as much about people as it is about machines. From its origins as a glamorous gamble to its downfall as a financial catastrophe, and finally to its rebirth as one of the most valuable collectibles in the world, the 507 encapsulates the full spectrum of automotive history. It represents vision, hubris, resilience, and ultimately redemption. For American viewers, the arc of the 507 resonates deeply, because the car was aimed directly at the US market, failed spectacularly in its own time, yet has become a star on American soil decades later. It reminds us that success in the car world isn't always measured in initial sales. Sometimes it's measured in the way history reclaims what was overlooked. Owning a BMW 507 today is a dream reserved for the few, with restored examples commanding prices well into the millions. Maintenance is an art form in itself, with each car requiring a level of care and craftsmanship few vehicles demand. Yet that reality only heightens its mystique. This isn't a car for the masses, it's a car for guardians of history. For enthusiasts who will never own one. The value lies in appreciating what it stands for, the importance of ambition, the beauty of timeless design, and the strange way that failure can eventually become triumph. The legacy of the 507 also offers a blueprint for modern car makers. It shows the danger of overreaching too soon, but also the long-term rewards of bold design that refuses to fade. In an era where many cars feel interchangeable, the 507 stands out as proof that risk and artistry can create lasting cultural impact, even when the business case collapses. Its story is a reminder that cars are not just products. They are expressions of identity, ambition, and human desire. In the end, the BMW 507 Roadster isn't just the forgotten German classic worth millions today. It is a paradox on wheels, a monument to both failure and glory, and a timeless example of how the most fragile creations can sometimes carry the strongest legacies. That is why the 507 still matters, why it still inspires, and why it will forever stand as one of the most remarkable chapters in automotive history.